Welcome to yet another episode of The Shift powered by ETH Insights. The Shift showcases business leaders who delve into the intricacies of their fields, uncovering challenges, opportunities, and strategies for moving forward. Stay tuned to The Shift to gain valuable insights from industry experts and stay ahead of the curve. Real estate valuation is no longer just about location. Market trends, technology, and regulatory changes are reshaping the way we assess property values. With Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities emerging as new growth centers and sustainability becoming a major factor, the industry is undergoing a significant transformation. To break this down, today we have with us Sunil Agarwal, founder and managing director of Black Olive Ventures, India's leading real estate valuation firm known for its local expertise, risk assessment, and focus on transparency. Thank you, Sunil, for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Sunil, first to take the industry overview. Today real estate valuation is not just based on location. There are other factors like demographic shifts, regulatory changes, technology. So how is the valuation models changing to reflect the needs of this emerging market?
So I think valuation has gone through a paradigm shift from engineers trying to calculate the value of the building only as valuation to comparison methods which involved comparison with land values. I think customers are increasingly wanting to understand what is the income perspective from their investments. Even if you live in a house, people are saying, if I were not to live in this house, can I get a rent equivalent to where I will be there tomorrow? So I think income method is getting to be a method which will drive valuations in the future. And I think that is one paradigm shift. That yes, locations could be different, but people are saying if I invest an X amount of money, how much of the rental return am I going to get? But location still remains, because it is real estate, prime driver of valuation. But that is not reflected in, let's say, the value, but it is reflected in the capitalization rate. So let's say some locations which are better would have a lower capitalization rate because it is safer to invest in them. And whereas there could be locations that could be peripheral, let's say in the city, where the valuation could be very similar, but the cap rates will be higher because the return expectation of the investor is also adjusted to his risk. So I think risk, return, rewards, future of what infrastructure is going to be, especially in a country like India where we are still infrastructure deficient, plays an important part. So a valuer can know a location, must know a location, but should also read and understand what is the urban development that's going to happen tomorrow at that location, without which his valuation will not reflect the true picture of the client and his expectations. So that's how valuation is changing from location only to investments, to returns, to infrastructure, and what is the shift that's going to happen in the market given what's the scenario of demand and supply in that market.
Talking about risk, reward, and returns, what role do you think that technology is playing? Now there's AI-driven analytics, blockchain-enabled property record keeping. While these technologies, they are making systems more efficient and more transparent, but then their adoption is still not even. But which of these technologies do you think are truly transformative, and how can their adoption be made more even?
So I think every technology that comes in has something to contribute in every sector. In our sector, for example, Google Maps. You did not have Google Maps, let's say 20 years ago and they were very new, even if somebody was using them. So that's transformed the entire landscape of valuation, because you can, sitting here, see what is the location in Dubai, or for that matter, New York, and you can see what's the cluster around it. So a lot of work can get done in the office. So that's one example. Drones, like for example, I remember a lot of hazardous locations which we do for our clients. It could be a petrochemical complex, it could be a dump waste site. And I remember going on those sites and my shoes used to actually, burn after a while, and there were holes inside the, shoe because the toxic nature of, but today you can use a drone, you can very well survey the area. So technologies are improving the processes, they're reducing the time in which we are able to process that information. There are technologies that also do predictive tools of what valuation could be in a certain area, given all the data and you try and do this. But that, I think, is something that will take more time, refinement. Future is still not known to the mankind the way things will shape up, and you can make a prediction based on the past trends. In the future, how much of that model incorporates infrastructure? But to give an example, gold was something that every analyst told in 2024 will go down and it has reached its peak. You know, US elections, Trump policies, today gold is at a new high. And that is where I think a lot of valuation, prediction, or assessment will still be done at the local level. US, for that matter, has about 95% accuracy when it comes to valuation of a residential property, but the banks still will want somebody to go visit and then understand the perspective, and with that data, give a valuation. So I think we are still in a business which will not get impacted as badly as maybe some others. You will still need that human mind, human assessment of the environment around, and we would continue to be in business for 20 years. But process, I think technology will increasingly come in, reduce costs, reduce time. Um, Also, I think accuracy, because a lot of that calculation, if it is automated through a machine algorithm, will always be more accurate than a human. Only the inputs, which is the key to the value, will still be driven, I think, by human assessment.
That's very interesting point that you raise, Sunil, that while the technology is there, it is predictive and it's based on historical data. But your USP of Black College lies in local expertise, in risk assessment. How do you think that gives you a competitive edge in a data-driven world?
So I think data-driven world benefits everybody. So if today I have to inquire a value of a property in a given market, my local knowledge versus my other, competitors, bankers, clients would understand and would know to a certain degree. They would understand, and the difference will be that, let's say, what are the comments that go along that valuation report. So we've come across situations in valuation where we've documented very carefully, as in what went right and what went wrong. And we have a very strong, robust training module where we train our incoming staff to be aware of such situations. So if you see a property which is very old, it is a new nameplate, maybe somebody's removed the old one, put a new nameplate, and has started to fudge the documents. If a tenant is sitting in a building which has been there, you question the tenant for how long you've been there. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to assess whether it is a pagdi property which is being squatted upon, or it is something that the owner still has some kind of a control. There may still be a lease agreement that will be first. So there are many situations where you see the structure of a building and then say, okay, somebody told me it was a residential building, but it doesn't seem to be. So we came across this typical property in Chandni Chowk, which was a Gurudwara. And the owner of that property had removed all the boards and everything, tried to make it a residential facing property. But, somebody who was the surveyor there was well aware of things. And so we started to question, and then, we kind of hedged a lot of risk the bank would have taken in funding, let's say, a property where people go to worship. So in situations where our staff is trained and trained to observe everything, sometimes our clients get very upset. Why have you done that observation? It doesn't concern you. So we say, no, but that may have a bearing on the risk of the bank. So I think more than the value today, the value that Black Olive drives is a bank or any client to assess the risk and also the potential. And that is where I think we are moving away from valuation only firm to a valuation consulting firm, where we truly believe that we drive value by just giving the value. No, we do much more than that and try and become an advisor. And so we now have advisory services also, which clients respect and give us, because they understand that the value alone will never be sufficient for them to undertake a transaction or investment.
So moving from valuation only to valuation consulting, and also talking about risks, sustainability has started featuring a lot when it comes to valuation now, be it ESG compliance, climate risk assessment, energy efficiency. So, how are you integrating these factors into your framework now? And do you think there's a clear premium on green properties nowadays?
It's a very interesting question, both yes and no. Institutional clients who are owners of a full asset. So, for example, this is a building where we are sitting, it's a multi ownership. Uh, Sustainability does not play an important part because uh, it doesn't really affect the whole thing is that my maintenance cost is going to rise a few rupees a square foot a month, but the large consideration is going to be what I pay for this location that I sit on. Institutional owners that own, let's say, a hotel asset or an office building or IT park are much more concerned because it hurts their asset value. If the building is not sustainable, they have to change the air conditioning so many times. The cost of occupancy goes up, which is what they will not able to pass on to the occupiers otherwise. And their occupiers are also equally eco-sensitive. So, in institutional owned buildings, yes, it is started to make an impact. Are you ESG compliant? Are you observing what your waste effluents are, etc.? So, we do take into a matrix and say, is there a tick in the box? Have we arrived at a algorithm as to give marks to those? Is yet not something that we have been, or any valuer I think has been able to do. But yes, there is a premium that those buildings drive purely because there's a cost assessment which is lower for maintenance and their cap rates are lower. Um, Going forward, I think when regulation is going to get more strict, it is then and only then the valuation will truly reflect the value of these buildings. So if the regulation says that even though it's a multi-ownership building, you will pay a fine, let's say, if you don't adhere to all these things, will people get more conscious? So yes, then the buildings that are not governed as efficiently will lose value. In a way, it's happening, but it's not that distinct and stark today. The only difference I see is on the institutional holdings. But if I were to buy a house or a flat, and developers can say, okay, my building is compliant with platinum gold,
Right.
it doesn't mean anything because most of the developers will buy the cheapest points. So again, the whole sustainability game is reduced to what action do I take and what marks do I get. And the regulation says you must have 80 marks. So they will pick up the cheapest 80 marks and will not really do a building which is eco-friendly. And I think a part of that also has to do with architecture. You know, you have these glass facade buildings which are respected. I don't know why, because in a country like India, it is so hot.
Yeah.
You're double glazing the glass, you're consuming more air conditioning. It is not a vernacular architecture. You are doing no favor to the environment. And yet we continue to do these buildings. And when you have DLF, you have any big builder, any large occupier. I don't know why occupiers do not say that while this building is sustainable, it is still highly unsustainable because it comes at a cost. You're consuming much more materials than you should in order to make it environment friendly. So first of all, you make a building that's not architecturally, sustainable, and then you put artificial mechanism to make it sustainable. It, I think, is something is wrong somewhere. So I think we need a very different definition of sustainability.
It's more like greenwashing.
Yeah, it's just like that. So I think most of the vernacular buildings are much more green.
Yeah.
If you go to let's say a tomb, or you go to an old building
Absolutely.
in an old part of the city, you find that you do not need air conditioning. You go to some of these lime and mortar buildings, a fan is good enough, a cooler is absolutely good enough. And they are the ones that give you ambient temperature, ambient amount of, humidity. But today you try and find a mason who can do that building, the answer is you can't find that mason.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it's literally a foundational issue. Sunil, you work at the intersection of finance, technology, governance. What are some of the most crucial guiding principles that have helped you steer through, economic shifts, regulatory changes, and technological disruptions?
I think it's always being on top of the game. So if you continue to do very much what you were doing in the past, you're never going to be successful. At Black Olive, what we do is whenever there's a change in regulation, we try and educate our people on the ground, people who are making those reports, and it's very easy now. There's a WhatsApp group. You flash it with WhatsApp. Every 2-3 years, we try and revise the formats because the format that was there 3 years ago, 2 years ago may not be relevant today. New caveats, disclaimers. So I was on that committee. So when we made those caveats and disclaimers, people started to put them verbatim. Then we said, no, I don't think so that works. You still have to read through whatever you're writing in the report from a fresh perspective. So whether it is the cover page or whether it is the last page, every time you review, you always try and read everything. And there's a maker and a checker system. So the maker will make the report, the checker will check the report,